It was a nostalgic day as pupils who graduated from the Army Apprentice School at Devoy Barracks gathered to see the gates of their former alma mater restored to their rightful place at the Clock Tower, the last remaining building of the former military institution with a distinguished 42-year history. The site is now headquarters to Kildare County Council. The barracks was the only residential school for technical and craft training from 1956 to 1998. 1,800 pupils went through these gates. Boys went in and came out as men, superbly trained in their chosen trade of fitter, carpenter, motor mechanic, electrician and radio mechanic. The training, coupled with military discipline and leadership skills, saw many of them go on to accomplish and contribute to the very fabric of Irish society and beyond. The school accepted females from 1991. These vehicles back in 1962 seen here at an FCA training camp were heavy duty, and it was the apprentices that maintained them. Their expertise was the backbone of operations, the oil that kept the military machine turning at home and on peacekeeping missions on United Nations duty. The apprenticeship school was decommissioned in 1998, a casualty of the government of the day's decision to close a number of military barracks. 500 graduates returned for the ceremony earlier this year and were delighted to see the gates they went through as boys and came out as men back in their rightful place. Getting the gates to this stage took several years, with a committee of former serving members and local councillors on a mission to restore the gates and place the original bronze crests of the apprenticeship school on them. Naas Mayor Seamie Moore, a former FCA officer, is on that committee, and he has a fondness for gates, as he was instrumental in getting the gates from another decommissioned barracks, Magee in Kildare, placed on the grounds of the Military Museum at the Curragh.
Yeah, I was involved in the transfer of the gates from Kildare Military Barracks. It's an artillery barracks. I was an artillery officer, and I was involved in the gates here behind me, and they're absolutely beautiful. And the question came to my mind, where are the gates for the Naas Military Barracks gone to? And I poked around a little bit and found that, well, they were taken down and stored somewhere, but they couldn't find them. But we eventually found them down the country someplace, and we got them back. I'm very happy to have gone through a great liaison with the military authorities in the Curragh as to how to restore them and where we might put them. And we formed the committee eventually, and after 7 years, we've now got them back, they're restored.
The Military Museum was also the custodian of the school crests, and as Jim Brady, former instructor, retired commanding officer Lieutenant Colonel Des Donagh, and graduates Eamon Moore and Michael Devereux gathered at the museum, there were many memories shared.
I think the Apprentice School made a major contribution to the industrial development of Ireland, because as well as providing tradesmen, technicians for the army, the people who left were very successful in civilian life. Quite a number of them became entrepreneurs, started their own companies and created a lot of employment. Others went into major companies and attained senior management positions in them. And then a lot of them went into education, became teachers and passed on their knowledge to more young people in Ireland. So in that respect, I think it made a contribution out of proportion to their numbers to the state, particularly in the 1960s and 70s.
The knowledge and expertise carried into the future by graduates of the school played a large part in the very fabric of Irish education and society. Eamon Moore became an academic and lectured at Carlow IT until his retirement.
Initially I was teaching building construction, and I went on various courses on material science, and went up to UCD it was late in 1994, 95 to do her diploma, and after that I did a master's, because at that stage a master's would have been a basic requirement for lecturing at the Institute of Technology.
The restoration of the gates at Devoy Barracks evoked many memories, as the group of former serving members reminisced at the United Nations display in the museum that proudly shows what was involved in the day-to-day operations of service in the Congo and the Lebanon. Former apprentice Sergeant Patrick Mulcahy died during peacekeeping duties in the Congo in 1961. Private Stephen Griffin lost his life on April 18th in the Lebanon in 1980. And in 1986, Lieutenant Angus Murphy, who was commander of the 30th Platoon at the apprenticeship school, lost his life in the Lebanon.
After prayers were said in the airport mortuary, the coffin, draped with the UN flag, left for the Church of the Sacred Heart, Arbour Hill, escorted by former classmates. It will leave tomorrow for Tuam, County Galway.
His father was the GOC in the Western Brigade at the time, and indeed his brother was a serving captain at the time. So there was a strong military association with the Murphy family. He got his trip overseas, and unfortunately, there's different patrols out in Lebanon in different hotspots, and on the road to Atiri, or close to Atiri, a roadside bomb was detonated and Angus lost his life.
The school designed a trophy in his memory and presented it to the Best Soldier of the Year. One of the recipients was 1997 graduate Kieran Smith, who went on to serve with the Irish Coast Guard and was one of those lost in the tragic helicopter crash Rescue 116 in 2017. They were all tragic losses, men who served their country and contributed so much to the very fabric of society. And it was a day of memories at the ribbon-cutting ceremony at Naas as the crowds gathered.
I've spent 26 years now teaching in second-level engineering. And to be able to come back and see the bond that's still there with ex-apprentices is just outstanding. 5 years ago, I designed a lapel pin for members of the ex-apprentices. It's this one here. And you can see that it's designed on the crest for the Army Apprentice School in Naas. And it symbolises the 5 trades that we did in the apprentice school. And I couldn't get over the way it just took off with apprentices right across the globe. You know, it went viral.
The skills acquired during their training at Devoy Barracks, coupled with their leadership and team-building qualities, were much in demand all over the world.
I was lucky enough to move from the Army on retirement after 25 years into the world of corporate security and life safety. And having the background of the military and then the education side of it, opportunities arose initially with 3Com, an American multinational, and that gave me Europe, Middle East, Africa and Asia to look after. And then Google moved into Ireland and I applied for a similar role with that. And of course, after I don't know how many interviews as they do, I was lucky enough to get that. And I ended up in Google managing the global environmental health and safety program. It just, like that, you just accelerate through the company and you bring people together and work the programs.
So many of the graduates went on to become leaders all over the world. Mark Grehan travelled from Canada to attend the reunion and met up with his former colleague Peter Martin, who rose to the top of the ranks in the West Midlands Police as Detective Chief Inspector. His years at the school forged his future.
When I went from here to the training centre, it was the discipline, and I retired, or I finished with the Army as a technician sergeant. And you got one over on most young lads and girls that were joining the police then. And that helped me no end, and all through my career the discipline shone through in my life, you know. That and the advice from my mother.
First of all, I was with the steel industry in Canada, in Ontario. I was an industrial electrician for 28 years, and then the place closed. And then I went into automotive. I was in automotive for 9 years, and it closed as well. And then I was only 64, so I said, what will I do now? And then I decided to go back to school, and that's when I became a teacher. So I was teaching up until about 2 years ago, and now I'm retired.
Stories were swapped. Former colleagues, some who hadn't seen each other for years, pointed to the rooms they shared at the old school where the preserved last remaining structure stands.
I stayed in that room for 2 years along with 8 other people, and we're all the best of friends still. And I think that's what, and you see here today, that's what it is about. Like, you know, there's just over 2,000 apprentices in 42 years. So that bond is a bond that's unbroken for every apprentice. So even if you'd never met Apprentice before and he said it was in Naas, you can feel that bond, which is fantastic.
The barracks was decommissioned in 1998 and Louise Mahon entered that year, completed her training at the Curragh and went on to become a cyber defence expert. She entered the school at 17 years of age and says there are still great career opportunities within the Defence Forces even though the school is closed.
The experience that you're going to get by the opportunity to go overseas and work overseas, and you literally sink or swim when you're overseas in the middle of a desert and you've nothing but your box of supplies and your toolbox. So I'd say it's the best way to learn. You can't learn it in a textbook.
And the town of Naas thrived with the presence of the school.
Do you remember when you stepped off the bus outside that gate there, they were the first things you saw. They were probably also the last things that you saw on your way out. So that's how part of the history of Naas they are. This will probably be the last time that all these apprentices will ever get together again for this occasion. History is made here today.
The restored gates have now been formally handed over to Kildare County Council and remain as a monument to the men and women who served their country dutifully and contributed to the economy on so many platforms. It was a wonderful educational institution. It gave young people a purpose and equipped them for life, and there are those who think a similar model would very much have a place in the Ireland of today.
It was a unique school. It had a tremendous programme, more first place in Ireland in terms of education awards than the rest of Ireland put together came out of the school here. It was quite unique. Really sad it closed. I think the country could do with it again today with the demand for trades, and it's a real pity that maybe with the Defence Forces, the new ethos that's coming in, maybe they'll rethink this, even cited in Baldonnel or somewhere else. But it's definitely worth rejuvenating a school like this, not just for the Army, but for the country in general.
What an interesting story. Well, that brings us to the end of this evening's Nationwide. Thanks indeed for watching, and from all of us on the team, bye-bye. On Friday's Nationwide, we visit St Anne's Park in Raheny in Dublin to see how this great facility is used by people from right across the city who come here to enjoy the walks, the amenities and visit the urban farm.
Two beloved animals have